Hello everybody and welcome to me reading you another one of Alex Rider books. This one is called SCORPIA, Book 5, Chapter 12, Dear Prime Minister. Just before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a man got out of a taxi in Whitehall, paid with a brand new £20 note, and began to walk the short distance to Downing Street. The man had started his journey at Paddington, but that wasn't where he lived, nor had he come into London on a train. He was about 30 years old with short, fair hair, and he was wearing a suit and tie. It is not possible to walk into Downing Street, not since Margaret Thatcher erected huge anti-terrorist gates. Britain is the only democracy whose leaders feel the need to hide behind bars. As always, there was a policeman there just coming to the end of an 8-hour shift. The man walked up to him at the same time, producing a plain white envelope made from very finest paper. Later, when the envelope was analysed, it would be found to have come from a supplier in Naples. There would be no fingerprint, even though the man who had delivered it was not wearing gloves. He had no fingerprints. They had been surgically removed. Good afternoon, he said. He had no accent of any kind. His voice was pleasant and polite. Good afternoon, sir. I have a letter for the Prime Minister. The policeman had heard it 100 times. There were cranks and pressure groups, people with grievances, people needing help. Often they came here with letters and petitions, hoping they would reach the Prime Minister's desk. The policeman was friendly, as he was trained to be. Thank you, sir. If you'd like to leave it with me, I'll see it goes through. The policeman took the letter, and his would be the only fingerprints that would show up later. Written on the front of the envelope in neat, floating handwriting were the words, For the attention of the Prime Minister of Great Britain. First, Lord of the Treasury, 10 Downing Street. He carried it into the long narrowed office, which is little more than a port cabin, and which all members of the public must pass through before they can enter the famous street. This was as close as the letter would normally get to number 10. It would be rerouted to an office where a secretary, one of the many, would open it and read it. If necessary, it might be passed on to the appropriate department. More likely, after a few weeks, the sender would receive a standard working process to reply. This letter was different. When the duty officer received it, he turned it over, and that was when he saw the silver scorpion embossed on the other side. There are many symbols and code words used by criminal and terrorist organizations. They are designed to make themselves instantly identifiable so that the authorities will treat them seriously. The duty officer knew at once that he was holding a communication from SCORPIA and pressed the panic button, alerting half a dozen policemen outside. Who delivers this? He demanded. It was just someone. The policeman was old and approaching the end of his career. After today, that end would be considerably nearer. He was young, fair-haired, wearing a suit. Get out there and see if you can find him. But it was too late. Seconds after, the man in the suit had delivered the letter, and the taxi had drawn up, and he had got in. This taxi was not in fact licensed and its number plate was fake. After less than half a mile, the man had got out again, disappearing into the crowd, pouring out of Charing Cross station. His hair was now dark brown. He had discarded his jacket and was wearing sunglasses. He would never be seen again, but by 5:30 that evening the letter had been photographed. The paper analysed. The envelope checked for any trace of biochemical agents. The Prime Minister was not in the country. He had gone to Mexico City to join other world leaders at a summit meeting about the environment. He had been in the middle of a photo session, but had been called outside and told about the letter. Already he was on his way home. Meanwhile, two men were sitting in his private office. One was the permanent secretary to the cabinet office. The other was the director of communications. They each had a copy of the letter, 3 typewritten sheets, unsigned, in front of them. This was what they had read. Dear Prime Minister, it is with regret that we must inform you that we are about to bring terror to your country. We are acting on the instruction of an overseas client who wishes to make certain adjustments to the balance of the world power. He makes 4 demands. 1. The Americans must withdraw all their troops and Secret Service personnel from every country around the world. Never again the Americans act as international policemen. 2. The Americans must announce their intention to destroy their nuclear weapons program and as well as their long-range conventional weapon system. We will allow 6 months for this process to be put into effect and completed. By the end of that time, the United States must have disarmed. 3. The sum of $1 billion must be paid to the World Bank. This money to be used to rebuild poor countries and countries damaged by recent wars. The President of the United States must resign immediately. Prime Minister, you may wonder why this letter is addressed to you, when our demands are directed entirely at the American government. The reason for this is simple. You are the Americans' best friend. You've always supported their foreign policy, and it's time to see if they will be as loyal to you as you should have been to them. You have been to them. Should they fail, it is you who will pay the price. We will wait 2 days to be more precise. We are prepared to give you 48 hours starting from the moment this letter was delivered. During this time, we expect to hear the President of the United States agree to our terms. If he fails to do so, we will inflict a terrible punishment on the people of Britain. We must inform you, Prime Minister, that we have developed a new weapon, which we have called it Invisible Sword. The weapon is now primed and operational. If the President of the United States chooses not to respond to all 4 of our demands in the allotted time, then at exactly 4 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, many thousands of school children in London will die. Let me assure you most sincerely that this cannot be avoided. The technology is in place. The targets have been selected. This is not a hollow threat, even so we understand that you may doubt the power of Invisible Sword. We have therefore arranged a demonstration this evening. The England Reserve Football Squad will be returned to Britain from Nigeria, where they have been playing a number of exhibition games. When you read this letter, they will already be in the air. They are due to arrive at Heathrow Airport at 7:05. At exactly 7:15, all 8 members of the squad, including the coaches, will be killed. You cannot save them. You cannot protect them. You can only watch. We hope. By this action, you will understand that we are to be taken seriously, and thus you will act quickly to persuade the Americans to complete. But by doing so, you will avoid the terrible and pointless massacre of so many of your young people. We have taken the liberty of forwarding a copy of this letter to the American ambassador in London. We will be watching the news channel on the television, where we will be expecting an announcement to be made. You will receive no further communication from us. We repeat, those demands cannot be negotiated. The captain has already begun. Yours faithfully, Scorpia. There was a long silence, broken only by the ticking of an antique clock. As both men studied the letter for a 4th and then 5th time, each was aware of the other, wondering how he would react. The two men could not have been more different, nor could they have disliked each other. Sir Graham Adair had been a civil servant for as long as anyone could remember, not part of any government, always serving it, advising it, and some people said, controlling it. He was now in his 60s and had silver grey hair and a face accustomed to disguising its emotions. He was dressed as always in a dark, old-fashioned suit. He was the sort of man who was sparing in his movements and who never said anything until he had thoroughly considered it first. He had worked with 6 prime ministers in his lifetime and had different opinions about them all, but he had never told anyone, not even his wife, his intimate thoughts. He was a perfect public servant, one of the most powerful people in the country. He was delighted that very few people knew his name. The director of communications hadn't even been born when Sir Graham had first entered Downing Street. Mark Kellner, one of the many special advisers with whom the Prime Minister liked to surround himself, and he was the most influential. He had been at university studying politics and economics with the Prime Minister's wife. For a time he had worked in television until he had been invited to try his luck in the corridors of power. He was a small, thin man with glasses and too much curly hair. He was also wearing a suit, and there was a dandruff on his shoulders. It was Kellner who broke the silence with a single 4-letter word. Sir Graham glanced at him. He'd never used that sort of language himself. "You don't believe any of this rubbish, do you?" Kellner demanded. "This letter came from Scorpia," Sir Graham replied. I have had direct dealings with them in the past. I have to tell you that they're not known to make idle threats. You've accepted that they've invented some sort of secret weapon, an invisible sword. Mark Kellner couldn't hide the scorn in his voice. So what's gonna happen? They're going to wave some sort of magic wand and everyone's going to fall down dead. As I already said, Mr. Kellner, in my opinion, Scorpia would not have sent this letter if they did not have the means to back it up. They're probably the most dangerous criminal organisation in the world, bigger than the Mafia, more ruthless than the Triads. But you tell me, what sort of weapon could target children? Thousands of school children. That's what they say. So what are they going to do? Set off some sort of dirty bomb in the playground? Or maybe they're going to get to go around schools with hand grenades? They say the weapon is primed and operational. The weapon doesn't exist. Kellner slammed his hand down on his copy of the letter. And even if it did, these demands are ridiculous. The American president is not going to resign. His popularity ratings have never been better, and as for this suggestion of the Americans dismantle their weapon systems, do Scorpia really think for a minute that they'll even consider it? The Americans love weapons. They've got more weapons than just about anyone else in the world. We showed such to the Prime Minister and he'll laugh at us. MI6 aren't prepared to rule out the possibility that the weapons exist. You've spoken to them? I had a telephone conversation with Alan Blunt earlier this evening. I have also sent him a copy of the letter. He believes, like me, that we should treat this matter with the utmost serious. The Prime Minister has cut short his visit to Mexico, Kellner muttered. He's flying home as we speak. You don't get much more serious than that. I'm sure we're all grateful to the Prime Minister for interrupting his conference, Sir Graham retorted. Really? But I would have said it's the aircraft carrying these football players that we should be considering. I've also spoken to British Airways. Flying 007 was delayed in Lagos earlier today, and only left this afternoon just before 12:30 our time. It should be touching down at Heathrow at 7:05, just like the letter says, and the English reserve football squad are on board. So what are you suggesting we do? Kellner demanded. It's very simple. The threat to the plane is at Heathrow. Scorpia's helped us at least by giving us the place and time. We must therefore reroute the plane at once. It can land at Birmingham or Manchester. Our first priority is to make sure that the players are safe. I'm afraid I don't agree. Sir Graham Adair glanced at the Director of Communications, his eyes filled with an icy contempt. He had spoken at length with Alan Blunt. Both of them had been expecting this. Let me tell you my way of thinking, he continued. He held his two index fingers in the air as if to frame what he had said. I know you're scared of Scorpia. You made that much clear. Well, I read their demands, and personally, I think they're a bunch of idiots. But either way, they've given us a chance to call their bluff. Redirecting this football team is the last thing we want to do. We can use the arrival of the plane to test this so-called invisible sword. By 16 minutes past 7, we'll know it doesn't exist, and we can put Scorpia's letter where it deserves to be, in the bin. You're willing to risk the lives of the players? There is no risk. We'll throw a security blanket around Heathrow Airport and make it impossible for anyone to get near them. The letter states that the players are going to be hit at exactly 7:50. We can find out exactly who's on the plane. Then we can make sure that there are 100 armed soldiers surrounding it when it lands. Scorpia can bring out their weapon, and we'll see exactly what it is and how it works. Anyone trying to set foot in the airport, and we'll arrest them and throw them in a jail. End of story, end of threat. And how are we going to put 100 extra armed guards into Heathrow Airport? Sir Graham asked. You'll start a national panic. Kellner grinned. You think I can't make up some sort of spin to take care of that? I'll say it's a training exercise. Nobody will even blink. The Permanent Secretary sighed. There were times when he wondered if he wasn't getting too old for this sort of work. And this was definitely one of them. There remained one final question, but he already knew the answer. Had he put this to the Prime Minister, he asked. Yes, while you were speaking to MI6, I was talking to him, and he agrees with me, so I'm afraid of the matter. On this matter, you're overruled, Sir Graham. Who wears of the risks? We don't believe there are any risks, actually, but it's very simple. If we don't act now, We'll lose the chance to see the weapon in action. If we do this my way, we'll force Scorpia to show their hand. So Graham stood up. There doesn't seem to be anything more to discuss, he said. You'd better get on to MI6. You've better get on to MI6. Of course. Sir Graham moved to the door. He stopped and turned round. What happens if you're wrong? He inquired. And what happens if these players do somehow get killed? Kellner shrugged. At least we know what we're dealing with, he said. And they lost every single of their games while they were in Nigeria. I'm sure we can put together another team. The plane landing at Heathrow was a Boeing 747 flight number BA0074 from Lagos. It had been in the air for 6 hours and 35 minutes. It had departed date, and there had been a seemingly endless delay in Lagos, some sort of technical fault. Scorpia had arranged that. Of course, it was an important plane and followed the schedule they had imposed. It had to land by 7:05. It hit the runway at 5 minutes to. The 18 members of the football squad were sitting in business class. They were blank-faced and bleary-eyed, not just from the long fighter flight, but from the series of defeats they had left behind them. The tour had been a disaster from the start to finish. These were only exhibition games. The results weren't meant to matter, but the trip had been something of a humiliation. As they gazed out of the window, they looking at the grey light and the grey tarmac of Heathrow. Twilight, the captain's voice came over the intercom. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Heathrow. Once again, I'm sorry for the late running of this aircraft. I'm afraid I've just spoken to the control tower, and for some reason we're being rerouted away from the main terminal, so we're going to be out here a little longer. Please remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened, and we'll have you out of here as soon as we possibly can. And here there was something strange. As the plane taxied forward, 2 army jeeps appeared from nowhere, one on each side, escorting them along the runway. There were soldiers with their machine guns in the back, following instructions from the control tower. The plane turned off and began to move away from the main buildings. The 2 jeeps accompanied it. Alan Blunt stood behind an observation window watching the 747 with a pair of miniature binoculars. He didn't move as the plane trundled towards a square concrete holding area where, when he lowered the binoculars, his eyes still remained fixed on the distance. He had spoken for several minutes. He barely even breathed. There's nothing more dangerous than a government that does not trust its own intelligence and security service. Unfortunately, as Blunt was only too well aware, the Prime Minister had made his dislike of both MI5 and MI6 clear. Almost from the first day he had come to power. So this was the result. So what now? Sir Graham Adair was standing next to him. The permanent secretary to the Cabinet Office knew Alan Blunt very well. They met once a month, formally to discuss intelligence matters, but they were often members of the same club and occasionally played bridge together. Now he was watching the sky and the runway as if expecting to see a missile streaking towards a slowly moving plane. We are about to watch 18 people die. Kellner is a bloody fool. But even so, I can't see how they're going to do it. So Graham didn't want to believe him. The airport had been sealed off since 6. We've trebled security, but everyone is on the highest possible alert. You looked at the passengers list? Blunt knew just about everything. I've heard just about everything, about every man and woman who had boarded the plane. In Lagos, hundreds of agents had spent the past hour checking and cross-checking their details, looking for anything remotely suspicious. If there were any assassins or terrorists on the plane, they would have to be under deep cover. At the same time, the pilots and cabin staff had been alerted to look out for anything amiss. If anyone so much stood up before the squad had disembarked, they would raise the alarm. Of course we did, Blunt said irritably. And tourists, businessmen, family too, weather forecasts and a celebrity chief. Nobody seems to have any understanding of what we're up against. Tell me, Scorpia will do what they said they would do. It's as simple as that. They never fail. They may not find it's so easy at this time. So Graham looked at his watch. It was 7:09. It's still possible they made a mistake warning us. They only don't warn you because they knew there was nothing you could do. The plane came to a halt with two more jeeps on either side. At the same time, more armed soldiers appeared. They were everywhere. Some were wearing glasses on the ground, watching the plane through the telescopic sights of their automatic weapons. There were snipers dotted about on the roofs, all of them linked by radio. Armed policemen with sniffer dogs waited at the entrance to the main terminal. Every door was guarded. Nobody was being allowed in or out. 60 more seconds had passed. There were just 5 minutes to the deadline. 7:15. On the plane, the captain switched off the engines. Normally, the passengers would already be standing up, reaching for their bags anxiously, but by now they all knew something was wrong. The plane seemed to have stopped in the middle of nowhere. Powerful spotlights had been trained on it as if pinning it down. There was no tunnel connecting the door with the terminal. A vehicle edged slowly forward, bringing with it a flight of steps. Armed soldiers in khaki uniforms with helmets and visors crept along beside it. There were windows the passengers looked out of. They could see armed forces totally surrounding the plane. The captain spoke again. His voice deliberately calm, matter of fact. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation at Heathrow, but the control tower, that means that's all routine. There's nothing to worry about. We're going to be opening the main door in a moment, but I must ask you to remain in your seats until you're given instructions to leave. We're going to be disembarking our passengers in business class first, starting with those in rows 7 to 9. The rest of you will be allowed to leave very shortly. Please can I ask for your patience for just a few minutes more. Rows 7 to 9. The captain had already been told. Those were the rows occupied by the full squad. None of the players had been informed of what was happening. There were 4 minutes left. The players stood up and began to collect their hand luggage, a variety of sports bags and souvenirs, brightly coloured clothes and wooden carvings. They were glad they had been chosen to leave first. Some of them were thinking that it was all quite fun. The steps were connected with the side of the plane, and Blunt watched as a man in orange overalls ran up to stand next to the door. The man looked like an airport technician, but in fact, he worked for MI6. A dozen soldiers sprinted forward and formed a circle around the steps, their guns pointing outwards so that they resembled a human porcupine. Every angle was covered. The nearest building was more than 50 meters away. At the same time, a bus appeared. The bus was one of the two kept at Heathrow for exceptional circumstances such as this. It looked ordinary, but its shell was made of reinforced steel and its windows were bulletproof. Blunt had been in charge of all these preparations, working with the police and airport authorities. As soon as all the players were on board, it would leave the airport, not bothering with customs or passport control. Fast cars were waiting on the other side of the perimeter fence. The players, 2 or 3 in each, would be whisked to a secret location in London. By then they would be safe. Also, everyone hoped. Blunt alone was less sure. "There's nothing," Sir Graham murmured. "There's nobody even close." It was true. The area surrounding the plane was empty. There were maybe 50 soldiers and policemen in view, but nobody else. Scorpia would have been expecting this. Maybe one of the soldiers. Sir Graham hadn't thought of this until now, when it was too late. "They've all been checked," Blunt said. I went through the list personally." "Then for heaven's sake." The door of the plane opened. The stewardess appeared at the top of the steps, blinking nervously into the glare of the spotlights. And now could she fully appreciate how serious the situation must be. It was as if the plane had landed in a battlefield. It was totally surrounded. There were men with guns everywhere. The MI6 agent in the orange overall spoke briefly with her, and she went back inside. Then the first place appeared, a sports bag slung over his shoulders. That's Hill Smith," Sir Graham said. "He's a team captain." Blunt looked at his watch. It was 14 minutes past 7. Edmund Hill Smith was dark-haired and 1 minute till the kill. Edmund Hill Smith was dark-haired and a well-built man. He looked around him, obviously puzzled. He was followed by the other squad members, a black player in sunglasses. His name was Jackson Burke. He was the goalie. Then one of the strikers, a man with blonde hair. He was holding a straw hat, something he must have bought in Nigerian market. One by one they appeared in the doorway and began to walk down the stairs to the waiting bus. Blunt said nothing. A tiny pulse was beating in his temple. All 18 men were out in the open now. So Graham looked left and right. Where was the attack going to come from? There was nothing anyone could do. Hill Smith and Burke had already reached the bus. They were safely inside. Blunt twisted his wrist, the seconds on his hand, watched past to 12. One of the players, the last to leave the plane, seemed to stumble. Sir Graham saw one of the soldiers alarmed on the bus. Burke suddenly jerked backwards, his shoulders slamming into the glass. Another player halfway down the stairs dropped his bag and clutched his chest, his face distorted with pain. He toppled over, knocking into the 2 men in front of him. The 2 appeared to have been gripping by some invisible force. One after another, the players crumbled. The soldiers were shouting, gesticulating. What was happening was impossible. There was no enemy. Nobody had done anything. 18 healthy athletes were collapsing in front of their eyes. Sir Graham saw one of the soldiers speaking frantically into a radio transmitter, and a second later a fleet of ambulances appeared, lights blazing, speeding towards the plane. So somebody had been prepared for the worst. Sir Graham glanced at Blunt. I knew it had been him. The ambulances were already too late. By the time they arrived, Burke was on his back, gasping his last few breaths. Hill Smith had joined him, dropping to the floor of the bus, his lips mauve, his eyes empty. The steps were strewn with bodies, 1 or 2 feebly kicking, the others deadly still. The man with the blonde hair was lost in a tangle of bodies. The straw had rolled away, blown across the runway by the breeze. "What?" Sir Graham rasped. "How?" He couldn't find the words. "Invisible sword," Blunt said. At that exact moment, a quarter of a mile away in Terminal 2, passengers were just arriving on a flight from Rome. At passport control, the officer noticed a mother and a father with their son. The boy was 14 years old. 14 years old. He was overweight with black curly hair, thick glasses, and terrible skin. There was a slight moustache on his upper lip. He was Italian. His passport gave his name as Federico Caselli. The passport officer might have looked more closely at the boy. There was some sort of alert out for a 14-year-old called Alex Ryder, but he knew what was happening out on the main runway. Everyone knew. The whole airport was in a state of panic, and right now he was distracted. He didn't even bother comparing the face in front of him with the picture that had been circulated. What was happening outside was much more important. Scorpia had timed it perfectly. The boy took his passport and slouched away through customs and out of the airport. Alex Ryder had come home. Chapter 13. Pizza delivery. Spies have to be careful where they live. An ordinary person will choose a house or a flat because it has nice views, but because they like the shape of the rooms, because it feels like home. For spies, the first consideration is security. There's a comfortable sitting room with the window of a target for possible sniper's bullet. A garden is fine, so long as the fence is high enough and there aren't too many shrubs providing cover for the intruder. The neighbours, of course, will be checked. So will the policeman, the delivery man, the window cleaner, and everyone else who comes to the front door. The front door itself may have as many as 5 separate locks, and there will be alarm systems, night cameras, and panic buttons. Someone once said that an Englishman's home is his castle. For a spy, it can be his prison too. Miss Jones lives in a penthouse flat on the 9th floor of the building in Clerkenwell. Well, not far from the old meat. Not far from the old meat market at Smithfield. There were 40 flats altogether, and security check one by MI6 had shown that the majority of the residents were bankers or lawyers. Working in the residence were bankers and lawyers. Working in the city, Melbourne House was not cheap. Miss Jones had 2,000 square metres and 2 private balconies on the top floor, a great deal of space, particularly as she lived alone. On the open market, it would have cost her many millions of pounds when she bought it 7 years ago, but as it happened, MI6 had a file on the developer. Developer had seen it, and had been glad to do a deal. The flat was secure, and from the moment Alan Blunt had decided his second in command might need protection, it had become more so. The front doors opened onto a long, rather stark reception area with a desk, 2 fig trees, and a single lift at the far end. There were CCTV cameras above the desk and outside in the street, recording everyone who entered. Melbourne House had porters working 24 hours, 7 days a week, but Blunt had replaced them with agents from his own office. They would remain there for as long as necessary. He had also installed a metal detector next to a reception desk, identical to the sort you would find in an airport, or visitors had to pass through it. The other residents hadn't been particularly happy about this, but they had been assured it was only temporary. Reluctantly, they had agreed. They all knew that the women who lived alone on top floor worked for some government department. They also knew that it was better not to ask too many questions. The metal detector arrived, it was installed. Life went on. It was impossible to get into Melbourne House without passing through 8 agents on the front desk. There was a good entrance at the back, but it was locked and alarmed. The building could be climbed The walls had no footholds or any sort. Anyway, there were 4 more agents on constant patrol. Finally, there was an agent on duty outside Miss Jones' front door, and he had a clear view of the corridor in both directions. There was nowhere to hide. The agent in radio contact with those downstairs were armed with a high-tech fingerprint-sensitive automatic weapon. Only he could fire it. So if impossibly he was overpowered, his gun would be useless. Miss Jones had protested all about all of these arrangements. If one of the very few times she had ever argued with a superior. For heaven's sake, Alan, we're talking about Alex Ryder. No, Miss Jones, we're talking about Scorpia. There'll be no more discussion after that. At 11:30 that night, just hours after the deaths at Heathrow Airport, 2 agents were sitting behind the front desk. Both were in their 20s, dressed in the uniform of security guards. One was plump with short, fair hair and a childish face that looked as if it would never need to shave. His name was Lloyd. He had been thrilled to get into MI6 straight from university, but he was fast becoming disappointed. This sort of work, for example, wasn't what he had expected. The other man was dark and looked for Gene. He could have been mistaken for a Brazilian footballer. He was smoking a cigarette, even though it wasn't allowed in the building. This annoyed Lloyd. His name was Ramirez. The 2 men had started their night shift a few hours ago. They would be there until 7 the next morning when Miss Jones left. They were bored as far as they were concerned. There was no chance of anyone getting anywhere near their boss on the 9th floor. And as if to add insult to injury, they had been told to look out for a 14-year-old boy who had been given the photograph of Alex Ryder. And they both agreed that it was crazy. Why would a schoolboy be gunning for the deputy head of special operations? Maybe she's his aunt. Lloyd mused. Maybe she's forgotten his birthday and he's out for revenge. Ramirez blew a smoke ring. You really believe that? I don't know. What do you think? I don't care. It's just a waste of time. They've been talking about the events at Heathrow, even though they were part of MI6. They were too junior to be told what had really happened to the football squad. According to the radio, the players had picked up a rare disease in Nigeria. Quite how they'd all managed to die at the same moment hadn't so far been explained. It was probably malaria, Lloyd guessed. They've got these new mosquitoes out there. Mosquitoes? Super mosquitoes. Genetically modified. Yeah, sure. Just then, the front door swung open and a young black man swaggered into the reception area, dressed in motorbike leathers, a helmet in one hand and a canvas bag slung over his shoulder. There was a logo on his chest, repeated on the bag. Perley's Pizzas. Grab yourself a pizza, the action. The agents ran their eyes over him. About 17 or 18 years old, short frizzy hair and a wispy beard, gold shoes and lots of attitude. He was smiling crookedly as if he wasn't just delivering fast food to a fancy flat, as if he lived here. Lloyd stopped him. Who are you delivering to? The delivery man looked taken aback. He dug into his top pocket and pulled out a grubby sheet of paper. Foster, he said. A pizza wanted on the 6th floor. Ramirez was also taking an interest. It was going to be a long night. Nobody had come in or out yet. We're going to have take a look in that bag, he said. The delivery man rolled his eyes. Are you kidding? Are you kidding me, man? It's just a ham and cheese pizza. That's all. What is this place? Fort Knox or something? We need to take a look inside, Knox informed him. Yeah, okay, Jesus. The delivery man opened the bag and took out a little bottle of Coca-Cola, which he set up right on the desk. I thought you said you only had one pizza, Lauren complained. One pizza, one bottle of Coke. You want to call my office? The two agents exchanged glances. What else have you got in there? Lloyd asked. You want to see everything? Yes, as a matter of fact, we do. Okay. The lady man put down his helmet next to the bottle. He produced a handful of drinking straws, still in their paper wrappers. Next out was a rectangular card, about 15 centimetres long. Lloyd took it. What's this? What does it look like? The delivery man sighed. What does it look like? What does it look like? The delivery man sighed. I might leave it behind. It's like a promotion. Can't you read? You want to come into this place. You mind your manners. It's a promotion. We leave them all over town. We examined the card. There were pictures of pizzas on both sides and a series of special offers, family-sized pizzas. Coke and garlic bread for just £90.50. Oh, for just £9.50. Order before 7 and get £1 off. You want to order pizza? The delivery man asked. He was rubbing the two agents up the wrong way. No, Lloyd said. But we want to see the pizza you're delivering. You can't do that, man. That's not hygienic. We don't see it. You don't deliver it. Okay, whatever you say. You know I've been delivering all over London. I never had this before. With a scowl, he took out a cardboard box warm to the touch and laid it on the reception desk. Lloyd lifted the lift, and there was the pizza, a full season with ham, cheese, and tomato and black olives. The smell of melted mozzarella wafted upwards. You want to taste it too? The delivery man asked sarcastically. No. What else have you got in there? There's nothing else, just empty. The delivery man yanked open the canvas bag to show them. You know, if you're so worried about security, why don't you deliver it yourself? Lloyd closed the box. He knew he should do that. He should do just that. But he was a secret agent, not a pizza boy. And anyway, the pizza was only going as far as the 6th floor. He could see the lift from where he was standing. There was a steel panel next to the door, marked with the letter G, and then up numbers from 1 to 9. Each number lit up as the lift travelled, as if the pizza delivery man tried to go any further. He would see. As for the stairs between the floors, they had been equipped with pressure pads and security cameras. Even the air conditioning ducts running through the building had been alarmed. It was safe. Okay, you can take it up. You go straight to floor number 6. You do not go anywhere else. Do you understand that? Why should I go anywhere else? I've got pizza for someone called Foster, and she's on the 6th floor. The living man reloaded the bag and walked away. You go through the metal detector, Ramirez ordered. You got a metal detector? I thought this was a block of flats, not Heathrow Airport. The delivery man handed his helmet to Ramirez, and with the canvas bag over his shoulder, walked through the metal frame. The machine was silent. There you are, he said. I'm clean. Now can I deliver the pizza? Wait a minute. The fair-haired agent sounded threatening. You forgot the Coke and your promotion card. He picked the two items up from the reception desk and handed them over. Yeah, thanks. The lean man began to walk towards the lift. He had known he would be stopped. Behind the wig and the black later's mask, Alex Ryder heaved with a sigh of relief. The disguise had worked. Niall told him it would, and he'd had no reason to doubt it. He had been careful to make his voice sound older with an authentic accent. The motorbike leathers had thickened out his build, and he was wearing special shoes that had added 3 centimetres to his height. He hadn't been worried about his bag being searched. The moment he set eyes on them, Alex knew that Lloyd and Ramirez were new to the game, with little field experience. If they had taken him up on his offer and demanded to call the pizza company, Alex would have given them a business card with a phone number, but it would have been Scorpia who answered. If they had been smart, the two agents might have telephoned up to the sixth floor, but Sarah Foster, the owner of the flat, was away. Her line had been switched from outside. The call would be redirected again to Scorpia. Everything had gone exactly as planned. Alex had been taken from Madagascar to Rome, where he had boarded a flight with two Scorpia people he had never seen before. He had been with him at Heathrow, accompanying him through passport control to ensure there was no problem. How could there have been? Alex was in disguise. He had a false passport, and there seemed to be some sort of security alert at the airport. Everyone was running around in circles. Doubtless, it had been engineered by Scorpia. From Heathrow, he had been taken to a house in the middle of London, catching only a glimpse of the front door and the quiet, leafy road before he reached inside. Niall had been waiting for him there, sitting on an antique chair with his legs crossed. Federico, he greeted Alex by the name on his fake passport. Alex said little. Niall swiftly briefed him. He was given another disguise, the pizza delivery man costume, as well as everything he needed to break into Miss Jones' flat and kill her. How he got out again would be his problem. It'll be easy, Niall said. You'll just walk out the way you came in, and if there is any trouble, I'm sure you'll cope. Alex, I have every faith in you. Scorpia had already recognized the flat. So Niall showed him the plans. They knew where the cameras were, and how many pressure pads had been installed, how many agents had been commanded, and everything had been worked out, right down to the Coke bottle, which Alex had deliberately left on the reception desk, and which had been handed to him without being passed through a metal detector frame. It was simply psychologically a plastic bottle filled with liquid. How could it possibly contain anything metal? Alex reached the lift and stopped. This was the vital moment. He headed back to the two agents. He was standing between them and the lift, blocking their line of vision. He had already slipped the special offers card out of the canvas bag, and he walked out. As he walked, he was holding it in both hands. In fact, one side of the card peeled off to reveal a thin silver plate engraved with the letter G and the number 1 to 9. It was identical to the plate beside the lift. The other side was magnetic. Casually, Alex leant forward and placed the fake panel over the real one. It was held in place immediately. Sticking it there, I also activated it. Now it was just a matter of timing. The lift was open and he entered. As he turned around, he saw the two agents watching him. He reached out and pressed the button for the 9th floor. The lift door slid shut, cutting off his view. A second later, the lift jerked and moved up. The two agents saw the numbers changing beside the lift door. Ground 1, 2. What they didn't realize was that they weren't following the real progress of the lift. A tiny chip and a watch battery inside the silver plate were illuminating the fake numbers. The real numbers were blocked out behind. Alex arrived at the 9th floor. The silver panel showed he had stopped at floor 6. It had taken him 30 seconds to travel up from the ground floor. In that time, Alex had discarded the motorbike leathers to reveal underneath clothes that were loose, light wearing and black, the uniform of the ninja Sane. He took off his wig and grabbed hold of the latex, covering his face. It came off almost in one piece. Finally, he removed the gold tooth. The door slid open. Once again, he was himself. He had already been shown a floor plan of the entire building. Miss Jones' flat was to the right, and there were two unforgivable lapses of security. Although there were CCTV cameras in the fire escapes, there were none in the corridor, and the agent standing in front of the door could see all the way from one end to the other. But he couldn't see to the left, two blind spots. Alex was about to take advantage of them both. The agents on the ninth floor had heard the lift arrive. Like Lloyd and Ramirez downstairs, he was new to the job. He wondered why they had sent the lift up. Perhaps he should radio down and find out before he could make any decision. A boy with fair hair and death in his eyes stepped out. Alex Friday was holding one of the drinking straws the two agents had seen but not examined. He had unwrapped it, but it was already between his lips and he blew. The Fukidake, or blowgun, was another lethal weapon used by the ninjas. A needle-sharp dart fired into majority could kill instantly, but there were also darts that could have been hollow and filled with poison. A ninja could hit a man over a distance of 20 meters or without making a sound at all. Alex was much closer than that. Fortunately, the dart that had fired out the straw contained only a sleeping draught. It hit the side of his cheek. The agent opened his mouth to cry out, said stupidly as Alex then clapped. Alex knew he had to move quickly. The two agents downstairs would allow him a couple of minutes, but then they would expect him to return. He grabbed the Coke bottle and opened it, not turning the lid, but the bottle itself. The bottle came apart in half. Dark brown liquid poured out, soaking into the carpet. Inside the bottle was a package wrapped in brown plastic. Same colour as the Coke, but the label covering most of it, the package had completely been invisible. I tore it open. There was a gun inside. It was a P9, double-action semi-automatic manufactured in America. It was 6 inches long and with its stainless steel and polymer construction, it weighed just 18 ounces, making it one of the smallest, lightest pistols in the world. In the line magazine could have held 7 bullets to keep the weight down. Scorpia had provided just one. It was all Alex would need. Carrying the canvas bag with pizza, he went past the sleeping agent and over to Miss Jones' door. It had 3 locks. As he had been told, he lifted the pizza box lid and removed 3 of the black olives from the top, squeezing each one against the lock. The canvas bag had a false bottom. He opened it and trailed out 3 wires, which he connected to the olives. A plastic box and the button was built into the bottom of the bag, catching down Alex breasted. The olives, which weren't olives at all, exploded suddenly, each one a brilliant flare burning into the locks. The sharp smell of molten metal rose in the air. The door swung open. Holding the gun tightly, I just walked into a large room. The grey curtains draped along the far wall, a dining table with 4 chairs, and a suite of leather sofas. It was lit by soft yellow glowing radiating from a single lamp. The room was modern and sparsely furnished. Even pictures on the wall were abstracts, blobs of colour that gave nothing away. There were clues. He saw a photograph on a shelf with a younger Miss Jones actually smiling with 2 children, a boy and a girl aged about 6 and 4. A nephew and a niece. They looked a lot like her. Miss Jones read books. She had 55-inch wall mounted TV and an expensive wireless home music system. A chessboard stood on a slender table to one side. I like chess. I'm good at it too. I've got 4 trophies for chess. She was halfway through a game, but 2 is. I just wondered. None had told him she lived alone. He had a soft purring and noticed a Siamese cat stretched out on one of the sofas. That was a surprise. He expected the deputy head of MI6 Special Operations to need companionship. When he thought the purring grew louder, it was as if the cat was trying to warn its owner that he was there. And sure enough, a door opened on the other side of the room. What is it, Q? Miss Jones walked in, approaching the cat. She suddenly saw Alex and stopped. Alex? Miss Jones? She was wearing a grey silk dressing gown. Alex suddenly saw a snapshot of her life and the emptiness at the heart of it. She came home from work, had a shower, ate dinner on her own. Then there was the chess game. Maybe she was playing over the internet. News at 10 on the television. And the cat. She paused in the middle of the room. She didn't seem alarmed. There was nothing she could do. Suddenly no panic button or alarm she could reach. Her hair was still wet from the shower. I noticed her bare feet. He raised his hand. He raised his hand, and she saw the gun. "Did Scorpia send you?" she asked. "Yes." "To kill me?" "Yes." She nodded, as if he understood why this should be so. "They told you about your father," she said. "Yes." "I'm sorry, Alex." "Sorry you killed him?" "Sorry I didn't tell you myself." She didn't try to move. She simply stood there facing him. Actually, he didn't have much time. Any moment now, the lift might return to the ground floor, and soon the agent saw he wasn't in it. They would raise the alarm. They might be already on their way up. "What happened to Winters?" she asked. Alice didn't know whom she meant. "He was outside the door," she explained. "Winters was the third agent. I knocked him out." "So you got past the dude two downstairs? You came up here and you broke in?" Miss Jones shrugged. "Scorpia have trained you well." "It wasn't Scorpia who trained me. It was you." "It wasn't Scorpia who trained me, Miss Jones. It was you. But now you've joined Scorpia." Alice nodded. "I can't quite picture you as an assassin, Alex. I realize you don't like me while I'm blunt, but I can understand that. But I know you. I don't think you have any idea what you got yourself into." "I bet Scorpia were all smiles. I'm sure they were delighted to see you, but they've been lying to you." "Stop it!" Alex's finger tightened on the trigger. You know that she was trying to make it difficult for him, but he had been warned that this was what she would do by talking to him. By using his first name, he was reminding him that he wasn't just a paper cut out to target. He was sowing doubts in his mind, and of course, he was playing for his time. Nala told him to do it quickly. The instant they met, I just realized this was this was already going wrong. She had gained the upper hand, even though he was the one with the gun. He reminded himself of what Mrs. Rothman had shown him in Positano, Albert Bridge, the death of his father. He was facing the woman who had given the order to shoot. Why did you do it?" he demanded. His voice had become a whisper. He was trying to channel the hatred through him, to give him the strength to do what he had sent here for. "Why did you do what, Alex?" You killed my father." They just looked at him for a long moment, and it was impossible to tell what he was going on in those black eyes, but he could see that she was making some sort of calculations, of course. Her entire life was a series of calculations. And once she'd worked out the figures, someone would usually die. The only difference here was that the death would be her own. She seemed to come to a decision. "Do you want me to apologize to you, Alex?" she asked suddenly hard. "We're talking about John Ryder, a man you never knew. You never spoke to him. You have no memory about him. You know nothing about him. You're still my dad. He was a killer. He worked for Scorpia. Do you know how many people he murdered? 5 or 6. That was what Miss Rothman had told him. There was a businessman working in Peru. He was married with a son of your age. There was a prize in Rio de Janeiro. He was trying to help the street children. Unfortunately, he'd made too many enemies, so had to be taken out. There was a British policeman, an American agent. Then there was a woman. She was about to blow up the whistle on a big corporation in Sydney. She was only 26, and he shot her as she was getting out of the car. That's enough. Now Alex was holding the gun with both hands. I don't want to hear any of this. Yes, you do, Alex. You asked me. You wanted to know why he had to be stopped, and that's what you're going to do, isn't it? Following in your father's footsteps. I'm sure they'll send you all over the world, making you kill people you know nothing about, and I'm sure you'll be very good at it. Your father was one of the best. You cheated him. He was your prisoner, and you said you were letting him go. You were going to swap him for someone else, but he shot him in the back. I saw. I always wondered if they filmed it, Miss Jones murmured. She gestured and Alex stiffened, wondering if she was trying to misdirect him. But there was still low. The cat had gone to sleep. Nobody was approaching the room. I'll give you some advice, he said. You'll need it if you're going to go to work at SCORPIA. Once you join the other side, there are no rules. They don't believe in fair play. Nor do we. They had kidnapped an 18-year-old. I just remember the figure on the bridge. He was the son of a British civil servant. They were going to kill him, but they were going to torture him. First, we had to get him back, so yes, I arranged the exchange. There was no way I was ever going to release your father. He was too dangerous. Many more people would have died. And so I arranged a double cross. 2 men on the bridge, a sniper. It worked perfectly, and I'm glad. You can shoot me if it really makes you feel any better. That's what I'm telling you. You didn't know your father, and if I had to do it all again, I'd do it exactly the same. If you're saying my father was so evil, what do you think that makes me? I'm trying to will himself to shoot, but he had thought anger would give him strength, but he was more tired than angry. Now he searched for another way to persuade himself to pull the trigger. He was his father's son. It was in his blood. Miss Jones took a step towards him. Stay where you are. The gun was less than a metre from her, aiming straight at her head. I don't think it will kill her, Alex. You never knew your father. Why do you have to be like him? Do you think every child is made the moment they're born? I think you have a choice. I never chose to work for you. You didn't you? After Stormbreaker, you could have walked away. We never needed you to meet again. But if you remember, you chose to get tangled up with drug dealers, and we had to bail you out. And then there was the Milden. Wouldn't make you go undercover. You agreed to go. And if you hadn't looked a Chinese gangster in a deep freeze, we wouldn't have had to send you to America. You're twisting everything. And finally, the main Quay, you went after him on your own, and we're very grateful to you, Alex. But you ask me what do I think you are? I think you're too smart to pull that trigger. You're not going to meet me now or ever. You're wrong. Alex said she was lying to him, and she was lying to him. He knew that she had always lied to him. He could do this. He had to do it. He held the gun steady. He let the hatred take him and fired. In the air in front of him seemed to explode in fragments. Miss Jones had tricked him. She had been tricking him all along, and he hadn't seen it. The room was divided into 2 parts, a huge pane of transparent bulletproof glass from one corner to the other. Stretching from the one side to the ceiling. She had been on one side, he had been on the other. In the half-light, it had been visible, but now the glass frosted. 1,000 cracks spiraling outwards from the dent made by a bullet. Miss Jones had almost disappeared from sight. Her face broken up as if she had become a smashed picture of herself. At the same time, an alarm rang. The door flew open, and Alex was grabbed and thrown sideways onto the sofa. The gun went flying. Somebody shouted something in his ear, but he couldn't understand the words. The cat smiled and leapt past him. His arm was wrenched behind him, a knee pressed into his back. The bag was pulled over his head, and he felt a cold steel against his wrist. There was a click. He was no longer moving his hands. Now he could make out several voices in the room. Are you all right, Miss Jones? We're sorry, ma'am. Got the car waiting outside. Don't hurt him. Alex was jerked off the sofa with his hands cuffed behind him. He felt wretched and sick. He had failed SCORPIA. He had failed his father. He had failed himself. He didn't cry out. He didn't resist, limp and unmoving. He allowed himself to be dragged out of the room, back down the corridor, and into the night. That's the end of me reading you. So, bye-bye, everyone, and thank you for listening to this.